Hey, what's going on, guys? In this video I'm going to introduce you to the new Parcel bundler, and try not to have these thoughts of we need another bundler like we need another JavaScript framework or a hole in the head, because I thought the same thing, but the simplicity and the speed of this thing really caught my attention. Now, Webpack is an incredible build tool. It's very popular and powerful, and I don't think it's going anywhere. But with that said, a lot of people have problems setting up Webpack and learning it and configuring it. It's a bit confusing when it comes to configuration. So Parcel has zero configuration if you just want the basic module loading and basic asset bundling. So you install it, you run it, and you can use common JS modules as well as ES6 modules right off the bat with not a single line of configuration. Now, if you want to use Parcel with something like React, then you'll need Babel, and there will be a little bit of configuration, but not nearly as daunting as something like Webpack or some of the other bundlers. Now, Webpack has been around for a long time, and you can do a lot more, which makes your workflow and your development process more scalable. But if you're not looking for those extra bells and whistles, Parcel may be a better choice. It's definitely an easier and a faster choice. And of course, it's very, very new, so there's much more features to come. So in this video, we're just going to take a look. We're going to set it up. We're going to create some modules. I'm going to show you how we can use NPM modules, how we can use Sass, and do some other things with very, very minimal, if no configuration at all. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Coding Dojo is a programming school that turns beginners into developers in only 14 weeks. Over 90% of their grads land jobs within 3 months of graduating, often making over $70K per year. To learn more, visit codingdojo.com or click the link in the description below. Alright, so this is parceljs.org, and you can get to the GitHub page from here, and some of the documentation gives you some examples. Basically, as far as features, right off the bat, we can bundle all of our assets and use modules. We can use code splitting. We can make it so that we can split output bundles so that we only load what's needed at the time. Hot module replacement, error logging, and of course speed. And if we go down here to the benchmarks, you'll see that Parcel is about twice as fast as Webpack and Browserify, and if we use cache, it's about 10 times as fast. So there's a significant speed difference here, which is definitely worth checking out. Alright, so let's get started here. So I'm going to open up VS Code. Now, I'm using Linux Ubuntu 17.10, but it doesn't matter what you're using. If you're on Windows or Mac or Linux, it doesn't matter. Everything is going to be installed through NPM, so it doesn't matter at all. You just need Node.js installed. So I have my VS Code open in a blank folder called Parcel App, and I have my integrated terminal open as well. And before we create any kind of file, what I want to do is just install Parcel Bundler globally. So I'm on Linux, so I have to do sudo and then npm install. And we're going to do -g for global, and then parcel-bundler. Alright, we'll let that install. And I actually just did a video on creating a Babel Webpack starter kit, where I basically built it so that we could use ES6 modules. We installed Babel and all that stuff. And I want you, if you watch that video, I want you to see how much simpler this is. We don't have to create some kind of Webpack config.js file like we do with Webpack. Everything just works automatically when it comes to loading common JS modules or ES6 modules. Okay, so now let me just clear this out, and we're just going to do an npm init, so we generate a package.json file. We can just enter through all this stuff here. So now we have a package.json, and we don't need to worry about that for now. I just want it there. And we're going to create a new file called index.html. And we'll put some markup in it with Emmet, so we'll use !tab, and that'll just give us some head and body tags. And then this is basically going to be just a joke generator. I'm going to use the Chuck Norris joke generator API, which just allows us to fetch random jokes. I figured I wanted it to do something. I mean, this isn't going to be like a full application. A lot of it is just showing you examples of what Parcel can do, but I do want something on the front end, and it's just going to be just random jokes. So in the body here, for now, well, I guess we could put the markup. It's very simple. We're just going to have an ID of wrap. We're going to do an H1, and I'm just going to put in the word joke, and then we're going to have an H3 with the ID of joke. That'll be the placeholder for the actual joke that's fetched. And then under the wrap div, I'm going to put a paragraph with the ID of copy, because I want to show you how we can also fetch data from a text file using the FS module, or the file system module, which is actually a Node.js default module. So that's our markup, and then we of course want to include our main script. So we're going to say script, give it a source of ./index.js. So that's our main entry point. So let's create that file, index.js. And just to show you that, actually I'm just going to do a console log real quick, and we'll just say hello and save. So with Parcel, all we have to do to compile and to run a dev server is say Parcel and then index.html. So if I go ahead and run that, you'll see it built in 222 milliseconds. You can see that there's a dist folder. It has an index.html, excuse me, and a parcel app.js file. So this is the compiled code. Now, we also have a dev server running on port 1234. So if I were to go to localhost port 1234, you're going to see our application. And I'm just going to snap it over here. And let's open up the console, and you'll see we get hello. Okay, so it's as easy as that to compile and run your dev server. So let's do some module syntax here. So I'm going to create a new file, not in the dist folder. You don't want to create anything in the dist folder. We're going to create a new file in the root called jokes.js. And for now, we're going to use common JS syntax. So we'll say module.exports. And just for an example, I'm just going to have an object with a name of John Doe. And then we'll go to our index.js, and we can simply say const, let's say const name equals require, and then ./jokes. Actually, this should be, let's make this jokes. So jokes is the variable that we use to grab onto this module, and we know that it has a property called name. So let's say console log jokes.name and save, and we don't want quotes, and we get John Doe. So it's as easy as that to use our module, to use common JS modules. So let's do something better, something that makes sense, and let's create let's say module.exports, and let's make this a function. We're going to get rid of the name property, which is just a string. Let's create a function called get1. Alright, so we'll say get1 is a function, and what I want to do is use the Chuck Norris Jokes API. If I can just pull that up real quick. I don't know the exact URL, so I'm going to just search for Chuck Norris Jokes API. And it's this icndb.com. And this just gives us, let's see, we want to go to the joke, no, not the jokes, API. And if we go down, I just want to get a single random joke. So this is the URL that we want to fetch. So I'm going to first do this just using the fetch API, and we're going to return it as a promise. So you're going to learn a little vanilla JavaScript in the process. And this is all stuff that's in my new JavaScript course if you're interested. I'll put the link in the description below. So to return a promise, we say return. Actually, let's do it without a promise first, just so I can kind of show you how this works. Let's say fetch, and inside here we actually want to put that URL. So let's get that right here. So we'll copy that, and we'll put that right in there. And the way that fetch works, we have to do, it returns a promise. We have to do .then, and we want to take the result and we want to map it to res.json, and then we can do another .then and we can get the data from it. So we're going to say data, let's see, data, and let's just say console.log data. So we'll save that, and then let's go back to index.js, where we already brought in jokes, but let's go ahead and let's console log jokes.getOne, okay, which is a function. So if we save that and we look down here, what happens is it's when we're calling return, actually we didn't call return, but we'll try it. We'll say return data and save. Now we get undefined when we return. What we're seeing right here, the result is from this console log. That's going to work. The return is not, because this is done asynchronously. So what's happening is it's actually getting, it's returning before it's getting the data. So there's a few ways that we could handle this. One is with callbacks, which I don't really want to use. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a promise. So if I were to get rid of this console log and just return the data and reload, you'll see we just get undefined. So if we want to use a promise, what we'll do is wrap inside here. We're going to wrap this in return new promise, and then inside here it's going to take in, we're going to use an arrow function, so we need some parameters. We want resolve and reject. Okay, and then we're going to set an arrow function here, and then we're going to take this whole fetch right here, cut it, and put it inside of that return new promise. Now whenever we want to return the data, we want to use resolve. So this data right here, actually if we look at it, let's look at it first, what it gives us. And it gives us a value, so data, and then we want value, and then we want joke. See, the specific joke is actually in joke, so it's going to be data.value.joke. That's what we want to return from this getOne function. So remember, we're using a promise, so we want to say resolve and then data.value.joke, like that. So now we'll save it. We'll go back to our index.js. Instead of console logging jokes getOne, we want to just call it, and it's going to return a promise. So remember, a promise we deal with .then. So we want to, inside this .then, it's going to give us the joke. We're going to set that to an arrow. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to say document.getElementById. Remember, we have that ID of joke. And I'm going to say .innerHTML. And I'm going to set it equal to the joke that's being returned right here, which is being sent right here through this resolve. So let's go ahead and save that. And there we go. We have a joke that outputs to the browser. If I reload, it's going to give us another one. So every time we reload, it's going to be a new joke. Now, we could do the same thing using ES6 modules instead of the common JS syntax. So let me just show you how to do that. We'll go ahead and comment this out. Oops. And then ES6 modules looks like this. So we'll say import jokes from /jokes. Okay, now it's not going to work now because this side isn't right, the jokes.js. We're still using module exports, which is common JS. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the entire getOne function, so this whole thing here, and then I'm going to just comment this out. Alright, and then to use the ES6 syntax, we're simply going to say export const jokes, set it to an object, and then we're going to paste in that getOne function. Alright, and then we'll save this, and now if we reload, it works. Alright, so you can use this syntax, which is the ES 2015 module syntax, or Common JS, which is basically the Node.js syntax. Now we're not restricted to our own modules. We can install anything we want from NPM. So let's say we wanted to use Axios instead of Fetch, which I wouldn't recommend. I'd recommend using a native API over something like Axios, but just let's say you wanted to, you could go ahead and install Axios. So we'll say npm install Axios, and we can bring that in up here. We can even use ES 2015 syntax. Actually, we don't want those. So Axios from Axios. And again, I'm going to just comment this out just so you guys have it for reference. And then let's say export const jokes, just like we did above. And again, we'll do get one. Oh. And what we'll do is we'll also return this as a promise. So we want, excuse me, resolve, reject, and then in here we can use Axios. So we'll say axios.get, paste in our URL, which is this. Hopefully you guys are learning a little more than just Parcel in this video. So Axios returns a promise, so we're going to say .then, and inside here we're going to get a result or a response, and we're going to set that to a code block, and we're going to resolve, because we want to return a promise as well, so resolve, and then we're going to get it from res.data.value.joke, because Axios actually adds on this .data to the res, so that's why we did res.data.value.joke as opposed to up here we just did data.value.joke. So that should do it. Let's save and let's reload. Looks like the server oh yeah, we need to start the server up again with parcel index. See how fast that compiled? And there we go. So we're now using Axios in our client-side application without a CDN or without downloading and putting a script tag or anything. We simply installed it with NPM, just like you would do with Webpack, except it's much easier. So let me give you another example of using a module from NPM. So I'm actually going to install jQuery. Now I wouldn't suggest this, but I just want to do it as an example. So I'm going to Control-C, stop the server, and we're going to say npm install jQuery. Alright, and we'll go ahead and we'll go up here in our index.js and we'll say import money sign from jQuery. And then instead of using document.getElementById, which I would not suggest, if you guys have watched my JavaScript course, you know that I don't like using jQuery for any DOM manipulation. I think it's uncalled for. It's not needed. It's just extra baggage. But I just want to give you an example of using another module that we can install and use. So let's say ID joke and say .html, and we'll pass in, actually we'll use text. So jQuery or joke.text and pass in the joke variable. Save. Let's start the server, and it should do the same thing. So if we reload, there we go. So now we're using jQuery. Now what if we wanted to output just some text from a text file? So we could do that as well. So I'm going to create a new file called, let's call it copyright.txt. In here I'm just going to say copyright, and I'm going to say 2018. It's close enough. So just put the text copyright 2018, and what we can do is we can go back to our index.js and we could go ahead and import the FS module, which is a default Node.js module that deals with the file system, and we'll say import it from FS. And then down here, what I'm going to do is create a variable called copy, and we're going to set it to FS, and we're going to call the read file sync right here, read file sync method, and we're going to pass in _dir name, so the current directory, and then we're going to add on to that /copyright.txt, and then we want the encoding, which is going to be UTF-8, like that. Okay, so now we have a variable, and whatever we have in that text file should now be in this variable. So if we were to use jQuery, which I don't really like to do, you guys know that, but we'll say .text and we'll pass in copy and save. Let's see, what did I do wrong here? No such file. No such file, parcel app. Oh, I spelled it wrong. I forgot the Y. Alright, there we go, and there it is. So now we have this text. Let's see. I gotta start the server again. So now we have this text right here that is actually coming from a text file. Okay, so we're using the file system module to do that. Alright, now for those of you that are kind of new to this and kind of new to Webpack, what's going on is everything we're including here is being bundled into this Parcel app.js file. If you look at our actual compiled folder here, dist, it's simply an index.html file that points to Parcel app.js. If we look at Parcel app.js, it is just a huge file that has everything that we've done so far all compiled into this one file, or bundled into this one file. Okay, so instead of including all these separate script tags and all these separate files, you're using modules, internal modules to create this Parcel app file. Alright, so what about CSS? Okay, so let's do some stuff with CSS. So we'll create a new file, not in the dist, keep doing that. In the root, we're going to create a file called style.css, and let's go ahead and let's put an h1 here, and we'll say color red, and let's say for the wrap we have an ID of wrap, and for that I'm going to say display flex, or flex, and let's say justify content, let's do center, let's say align content, center, let's say align items, center, and let's do padding 5 pixels, let's do border 1 pixel, solid, and let's make it a gray, dark gray, and then a border radius, and there's a reason I'm doing this, and I'll show you in a second. So border radius 4 pixels, and then I also want a box shadow, and box shadow will be 0, 10 pixels, 10 pixels, and then RGBA, and we want black, so 0, 0, 0, and then 0.12 for the opacity. Alright, so let's go ahead and save this, and then let's go to our index.html and include this style sheet just like we would normally, and save. Okay, so that's what it looks like. Let's see, we just want to add a little padding on the h1, so padding right, we'll say 1 rem. Okay, so now we have our random joke generator with some CSS. Now what I want to do is I want to use PostCSS. So PostCSS if we go to GitHub, is a tool for transforming styles with JavaScript plugins, and there's a bunch of things you can do, and you can do all this functionality with Parcel. So what I want to do is add the auto prefixer, which will add vendor prefixes automatically. So for like Safari and other browsers, it'll add prefixes where it needs to. So to do this, we're going to install auto prefixer, which is an NPM module. So let's start the server down here. And you don't have to do this stuff. I'm just trying to give you guys some examples of what you can do. So let's say npm install auto prefixer. Whoop, I spelled that wrong. Okay, so now that we have that installed, all we need to do is add a file over here. If we want to use PostCSS, we need to add a dot, let's see, new file. It's going to be .postcssrc. And in this file, we just want to put in some brackets, and we want to specify the plugins for PostCSS that we want to use. And we want to use auto prefixer. So auto prefixer, and we're going to set that to true. And that should do it. Yeah, that's good. Let's save that. All right, so now when we save our style sheet, I'm just going to resave this, and then let's go ahead and run, I'm going to clear this out, and let's run parcel index.html. That should compile everything and run our server. And let's go into the dist folder and look at our CSS file. So now if we stretch this out, you can see CSS, and look at that. So display flex, we have all of these prefixes, the WebKit, box pack, MS flex pack, all this stuff for other browsers, Webpack, box shadow, all stuff that we didn't have to add by default and we don't have to worry about. So auto prefixer can be really helpful for maximum browser compatibility. And basically the only configuration we had to do was this simple RC file right here with the auto prefixer plugin. Alright, another thing we can do is we can actually use Sass. So first I'm going to just create an extra CSS file. So I'm going to call this backgrounds.css, and in this file I'm just going to say body, and we're going to set the background to a light gray, so that there. And then we can go to our style.css, and we can go and we can simply say @import backgrounds.css. Actually, I want to do /. It's in the same directory. And let's save and reload. Oh, I forgot a semicolon. Alright, so we'll save that. And now you can see the background has a light gray, just to make sure, because that is really light. Let's do a black. Okay, so you can see that that is being included. Now, we can also use SCSS or Sass files. So, of course, we do need to install Node Sass. So I'm just going to clear this out and say npm install node dash Sass. Okay, and now excuse me, what I'm going to do is change this background CSS, which is right here. I'm going to change the name to SCSS like that, and then I'm going to create another file called colors.scss. Actually, let's call it variables.scss, and we'll set a variable in here. So we'll say variable light gray, and this is just Sass syntax. We'll set it to that, and then we'll go to our backgrounds SCSS. Now the reason I changed it to SCSS is we can't use variables in a CSS file, so it does have to be SCSS to be able to use the variable. So we'll say light gray, save, and then go to style.css and just change that to, we're importing now backgrounds SCSS, and save and reload. Oops, we need to start our server first. Okay, so we'll reload. Looks like, let's see what's going on here. Oh, you know what? I didn't include the variables inside the backgrounds file. So we need to say import /variables.scss and save. And there we go. So now if I were to go in variables and change this to, let's say, red, and save and reload, there we go. So we're now using Sass. So as you can see, this is very, very easy to implement all these different development technologies, Sass, modules, auto prefixers, and everything that comes with PostCSS. You also have PostHTML you can use. You can install a Babel plugin. So you can do a lot with Parcel, and I'm just getting into it. It's brand new. This is just kind of what I've gotten so far. I hope I didn't confuse you guys with like the jokes with using promises and fetch and all that stuff. I hope that wasn't confusing. But my point is just to show you that we can create our own modules. You could have just exported a single string if you wanted, but I wanted to do something that was kind of fun and maybe taught you something else along the way. All right, now if we stop our server and close everything up, whoops. Okay, so this in our root here is just all of our development stuff, right? This dist folder, this is our actual application that we can upload to whatever, GitHub pages, a shared host, anything. So what I'm going to do is in the dist folder, I'm going to go to index.html and I'm just going to open it with live server, which has no compiling or anything like that. It's simply going to load the HTML file. I'm going to close this first and then say open with live server, and we get our application. So I can reload. We're going to get a random joke each time, and we can do what we want with this application that uses all of this bundling. All right, so I hope this wasn't too long, guys, and I hope it was clear. And hopefully you'll take a look at this and use it in the future. There's not too many new technologies that I get excited about, but I really think that this is going to take off because it's so easy to use, and it gives you a lot of the stuff that something like Webpack gives you, but much faster and much easier. Okay, so thanks for watching, guys. If you liked it, please leave a like, please subscribe, and I will see you next time. Coding Dojo is a programming school that turns beginners into developers in only 14 weeks. If you're serious about landing a career in tech but lack the formal education or background, Coding Dojo will get you there in no time. With over 3,000 graduates to date, over 90% of their grads land jobs within 3 months of graduating, often making over $70K per year at tech firms of all sizes, from companies like Google to local startups. To learn more, visit codingdojo.com or click the link in the description below.